who are close to buying a house but don't quite meet the requirements, so the government steps in to help them. So there's shared equity, where the government provides a low or no interest loan for a buyer to put a down payment on a house, or on a mortgage, I guess, as I phrased it here. And then there's the shared ownership, which is more in line with affordable housing, where buyers acquire a stake in the property and then pay a rent as a percentage value of the other stake in the property. And then they can increase their equity over time with a less rigid timeline than mortgages. Now, these are really more targeted towards high inflation and high interest rates, which for the past decade hasn't really been a problem. They're still an important part of the London plan, but they're not a crucial part. Really what the plan is focused on is social rent, where it's sort of like Section 8 housing, but it's owned by the council rather than subsidized. And that just has the rent caps, where people are renting, not buying, just renting in a low-cost housing. And this is seen as the more viable option rather than trying to get people who are in this really low-income bracket to buy housing.
So next policy is Greenbelt policies. The Greenbelt is referring to stretches of rural land in London without any sort of commercial or residential developments on them. Greenbelt policies put a pressure on maintaining these rural lands in London, and this therefore drives up the housing prices because there's less land for housing and less housing in general because of that. These constraints are justified by the urban containment and stopping the spread of urban sprawl. And with these policies, there's been the idea that's been discussed of loosening these Greenbelt policies in order to offer up more land that could be developed on and used to build more houses and increase the supply and lower the prices. And with this decision, it's necessary that there's a cost-benefit analysis, weigh the benefits of utilizing the land. And with this decision of using the land, there would be equally environmentally viable land that would be replaced by the land that's being used. It is a controversial topic, both politically and economically, as there's a strong resistance to the urbanization and loss of the Greenbelt land. Another slide is just some general trends and figures to note. Most of this we discussed briefly in the slides before, but I'll go over it again. Strong trends show that the increased demand and rising house prices, especially in population centers, especially in population centers that have financial enterprises. Large firms have a benefit to locating close to each other, and this creates a rush of people towards the population center to be around places that house jobs and opportunities. Data shows that London also has strong interest from foreign parties. For example, 13% of properties sold in London from 2014 to 2016 went to foreign investment. And if there were no foreign purchases from 2000 to 2014, housing prices would be 19% lower. So there's obviously a strong appeal of the London housing market to outside foreign parties. So this is a graph showing the median housing affordability ratio there's the London average, the UK average, and then Kensington and Chelsea and Tower Hamlets average, which are other boroughs in London. And it's obvious that, especially in the Kensington and Chelsea boroughs, that the affordability ratio is skyrocketing in recent years.
So in conclusion, in concentrated markets such as London, there is no one-size-fits-all answer. However, we did find some general trends in what people thought might work to fix this problem. And so here they are, sort of as follows. So land ought to be proactively used and managed for the good of the community, where possible, to create the largest possible benefit to society. So in order to create incentives for such use, Regulators have to provide a better alternative than the market does through profit margins or alternatives to land use and green spaces for developers and communities alike in these areas that would be affected by affordable housing and changed, to encourage that wider cooperation, keeping in mind these regional sensibilities and principles. And then the regulation will need to be drafted beyond that to try and prevent land and housing from being used purely as these empty financial assets, trying to keep the housing market moving rather than static investment items.